Is your favorite billionaire in financial trouble? Are private equity firms facing hard times? Maybe. The amount of private equity capital is way down. In a trend that began during the pandemic, activity has fallen to its lowest point in over a decade. We're talking a decline of close to 30%. That may make some of these equity firms get a little desperate. But why should you care? How does it affect you? The American dream has always been a nice home and family and your own business. It's the dream of every person around the world. So let's say your grandfather started a small company that sold barbed wire. Let's call it Standard Products Company. He built the company by hand, working his entire life to make something out of it. And it was a viable firm when it was passed down to your father, who brought you in when you were old enough. So it's safe to say you grew up in the company. Over the years, the Standard Company would branch out to other related products, and by the time you took the helm, the firm was well known and respected, and it made a profit. Not always a large one, but enough to keep everyone working. And so things continued this way for a few years, until one day a well-dressed man knocked on your door with an offer that seemed too good to be true. He said he saw a very bright future for the Standard Company, but not if he kept thinking small. He laid out a plan to become a partner in the company, to invest in it, and to grow its operations nationwide. It's an exciting proposition, but you're hesitant, and eventually you turn them down. But it doesn't matter.
Okay. Do you want to play rough? Okay.
Say hello to my little friend called the leveraged buyout. Hi, I'm Bob. This is Get Details. Today we're uncovering some of the secrets behind private equity firms. Some of the more famous ones include the Blackstone Group, KKR, the Carlyle Group, Apollo Global Management, and CVC Capital Partners, just to name a few. It's estimated there are over 7,000 private equity buyout firms. The word equity really just means ownership. When you buy stocks, you're taking part in an equity market. When you purchase a house with a mortgage, the amount you own is your equity. So private equity takes money they gather from various private sources, and they use it, among other things, to buy out companies, sometimes against the will of the company's owners or directors. That's called a leveraged buyout, or LBO. And it's all legal, as long as they follow the rules. So what's the big deal? Why should we care about this at all? Well, let's take a look and see if we really should be concerned. Numbers vary, but it's estimated there are more than 18,000 venture capital-backed companies. It's an industry worth a combined $3 trillion. There are some who say such targeted, focused investment by such a large number of financial companies is threatening the stability of the American economy. There are many who consider private equity firms as pirates or raiders, and they're only in it for personal profit. And if those efforts to extract capital saddle the target company with crippling debt and force them to reduce their labor force or eventually go out of business, these financial operators will still get their money, and they'll just move on, leaving the ruined company in the dust and rubble to fade away. That's what a lot of people have said, but is it true? Well, in many cases, yes. Let's take a look at some of the most famous companies that have been the targets of LBOs in the past, and decide if it was a good thing or a bad thing for the company or the private equity firm. These are some of the most valuable leveraged buyouts in history. There are a lot of very well-known companies on this list. And once again, we ask, well, why should we care? It's just business. It's always been this way, and there is some truth to that. But here's the way it works. A private equity firm will target a takeover company. If they won't sell at a reasonable price, they may raise capital from various sources, like investors, and then take out loans to cover the rest to buy out the company, using the company itself as collateral. This creates a huge loan that must be paid off by someone, and it's not going to be the private equity firm. Plus, as part of the strategy, they want to lower cost and maximize profits, so they lay people off, cut back on operations, consolidate locations, and raise prices. Then they grab their profits and leave the company to dangle alone in the wind, until eventually it drowns in the debt that the LBO created. So, is it business as usual? You bet. But it's a bad business for the average Americans who don't have large pools of wealth at their disposal. But there have been cases where an LBO actually improved the profits of companies that were in trouble before the acquisition. Here's some great examples. Private equity firms would probably object to the reputation many of them have earned. They see themselves as value creators who improve the companies they invest in, or they consider themselves to be partners with the businesses, helping them to grow and succeed. And many private equity firms emphasize their role as long-term investors who aim to build sustainable value over time instead of focusing on short-term gains. But how does that affect you? Are you paying more for less? I'm afraid so. Now, as far as how well your favorite billionaire is doing, many private equity firms have faced significant challenges since the pandemic. That lockdown was deadly for many businesses all around the world. Private equity capital, which comes from wealthy investors, fell to its lowest point in over a decade. The primary motivator for private equity firms is profits. If it seems they can make more money by improving a target company's operations, that's what they'll do. Or if it appears a quicker, more expedient route is to pillage the company, lowering operating expenses, piling on debt, and taking the profits, then that's what'll happen. This is the third year in a row of decline for the private equity markets. And yes, many are facing hard times. Chances are their portfolios may be a little less lofty, but overall, they're still doing just fine. The rich do get richer. And remember, hard times for a billionaire looks a little differently than it does for a worker who just lost their job after 20 years of loyal service to the same company. Hey, thanks for watching. Be sure to check out our other interesting videos on a variety of subjects and get details.